We have been discussing it every day for the last few days. Those emails, of course, sent from Fergie to Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted paedophile, in which she apologises for publicly disparaging him. But this is after he was convicted of sex offences. These have been leaked. And she wrote, "I know you feel hellaciously let down by me, and I must humbly apologise to you and your heart for that." She wrote that she only condemned him because she was worried that her friendship with him could ruin her career as a children's book author, but that her apology came from the truth of my heart. Sarah, of course, is the ex-wife of the Queen's second son. She's now been dropped by multiple charities. She's faced widespread condemnation. But I wonder whether you think all she really needs to do is just wait for this whole thing to blow over. And of course, one of the people who's been most vocal about this is Lizzie Cundy, who knows her.
Yeah. Because I reached out to Sarah, obviously, because I was worried for her, and she was on every front page of every paper, and she's hugely regretful, wish she'd never met Jeffrey Epstein, and sadly was taken in by him, like many others were, like Peter Madison, like the Clintons, and it's one of her deepest regrets. And the reason I talked about her, she wanted me to say, was the reasons why she sent that email. And the reasons was he was literally threatening her, and she was scared for herself, her family, and what it could bring on the royal family, because he said he wanted revenge. And he was, at the time, one of the most powerful men. And
Except he was in prison at this point.
He wasn't in actual prison at that time. He was at home. He wasn't actually in.
So he'd been in prison and come out.
But she was scared of him, and I think if anyone thinks their family's going to get hurt, I think she didn't think it was stupid, it was silly, and she regrets it. But I think if you think yourself and your family are going to be ruined, you're going to try and appease this man.
Does she accept or understand why people have been so horrified by this? This kind of ingratiating, sycophantic, self-serving, self-justificatory email to a paedophile, but not just that, but only about 3 or 4 weeks after she'd made this very public statement in a public interview saying, "I'll never, never, never see him again. I abhor what he did. I'm horrified. I'll never go anywhere near him." Then she sends this apology. Do you think she may even be watching us right now, do you think she understands what it is that people don't like?
Oh, she totally understands it, and I can't tell you enough. There's no one more sorry than Sarah Ferguson today, let me tell you, and she's really going through it. She's lost her charities. She herself had cancer. The cancer charity dropped her. That really hurt her, and she knows, she's done wrong. But she knew she had to do something to try and help her family, and that's what she thought was the best. Also, he was threatening her, publicists, other friends. It was getting dark and very nasty, and this man is vile, he's toxic. Even from the grave, he's toxic, Vanessa.
Let's bring Elizabeth in. I mean, you've written this,
choice.
Your latest book is all about what goes on, the kind of machinations behind the scenes, and, people who are in powerful positions and influential positions making bad stories go away. I mean, that literally is a big part of the plot of this fabulous book. Now, Fergie didn't think this was going to come to light. It was 15 years ago, and she had built back better a bit, hadn't she? She certainly was working for these charities, and Prince Charles had included her in Christmas celebrations. Yeah. She'd been present, as we saw, at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. I mean, she was obviously hoping no one would ever see this.
I think there's two things going on here. One is when you occupy a space of entitlement, you think you can get away with things because you always have, and you've often been rewarded for that. Now, who I blame in this situation are the men. Sorry, Marvyn, not you. The men in this situation are the ones who have most guilt to shoulder. I think Prince Andrew and his appearance on that Newsnight interview absolutely horrified me. I actually do feel for Fergie in the sense that when I see her, and I say this not knowing her as you do, Lizzie, I see someone who is desperate to be loved, and it's made her into a people pleaser and someone who has a sort of sense of insecurity and low self-esteem and wants to keep everyone happy. And it's led her to make some terrible mistakes and blunders. And on the one hand, she's apologising for being in touch with Jeffrey Epstein. On the other hand, then she's emailing him saying, "Oh, you're still a supreme friend." That's not right, but I can understand the motivation that it might come from. And I think that the British public is very forgiving when someone owns their mistakes. That's been my experience of it. And I think if she owns it all and is, not right now, but in the fullness of time, owns it all, gives a heartfelt apology, and maybe it goes on reality TV. I can see online maternity. That's going to be her redemption, Vanessa.
Well, let's bring
words.
Marvyn into this. Marvyn, I'm not sure about this, and I think that there's one thing that stops that possibly being a potential result of all of this, which is just the word paedophile. That once that's in the picture, everything is so deeply sullied and unsavoury and horrifying, especially for a mother of two daughters, you know, that I'm not sure the public or the royal family can allow a comeback from this, even though we all realise failure is a part of life, misjudgments, but it's that word, it's that idea, I think, that makes it just repellent.
I think crimes against women and children are by far the most pinnacle of crimes against humanity, and one that we all stand up against. I think when it comes to someone like her, an enabler, very similar to Ghislaine Maxwell, we can frame the men in ultimately the ultimate context, but we do have to look at who maintains and keeps the patriarchy going and the bad sides of men's behaviour going. And there are a lot of women who do support that. They have to be held accountable for their individual actions and contributions to those things. I think in a way I do feel sorry for her in the sense of the grand scheme of things. It hasn't gone well for her for a very long time from what I've observed. But I do think you just have to be responsible. If you take money and if you send support and congratulations to people who are convicted of really heinous crimes, you're responsible, and you cannot hold space around children, around vulnerable people as a result. And so while you may not be able to hold that space, a new career in reality TV show may be very possible, and that could be a beautiful rebirth and we get to know more about who she actually is. But I think this side of her life, I think, should be closed, and young people and children and women need to be protected by people
Let's
like
go
that.
to the phones. Well, you can say something in 1 second. Let's talk to Julie in Gloucestershire first. Julie, how do you feel about this? Do you think there is a possibility of her coming back into public favour, coming back into public life even?
Yes, I do. I feel very sorry for her. She made a big mistake. She's a big person in the face of the public. The man's dead. It's gone. It's over. We all make mistakes. She's made her a big mistake. Let her get on with it. She's fine.
I mean, I think it would be great if that were true, that it's over, but I'm not sure it is over, Julie, because the young girls who were the victims are still alive, except for Virginia Giuffre, who, as we know, took her own life only very recently indeed. So you might say that the ramifications of his crimes carry on and on and on, and will be interlaced in the lives of those girls and women forever. But Lizzie...
And I would say that Sarah, has done a statement saying her thoughts and prayers are always with the victims. But I think what our caller there, Julie, said, which is very right, we're all human, we've all made mistakes. Sarah Ferguson's made her mistakes, but been, on every front page of every paper, each and every time. And she is so sorry. And I think what you said, Elizabeth, is spot on, just to take a little time and then come and do her truth bit. And people will want to hear from Sarah, because underneath there is a girl that really has insecurities, doesn't really, she really isn't who you think. And I think
I think there's something really, really difficult. We sat here a couple of weeks ago talking about Angela Rayner, right? And we had a similar empathy for her in terms of the error that she made, but still hold her very strongly to accountable. I think this is significantly more serious, actually. And I believe that, yes, we can understand the human elements and challenges that she's faced, but I think on the face of it, what she's done and what she represents needs to be really clearly condemned, because we know that this problem is existing around the world at scale, and we need to actually have a hard line on it before we start talking about the humanity of the adults involved.
All right, and also in terms of entitlement, in terms of, living a life that most people couldn't even dream of. She and Andrew still living at Royal Lodge. I think it's got 32 bedrooms. She's said to have her own suite. They're divorced.
I don't think King Charles will be, I think from what I hear, that won't be happening. I think they'll be told to,
I don't know whether whether the king can get his brother out, because he has this very long lease. But I mean, in terms of, being just another girl, just another woman, just another person, she certainly has and continues to live the most extraordinary life. Let's go to Joe in Glasgow. Joe, you don't see a way back for Fergie.
No, I definitely don't, Vanessa. No. What I feel with Fergie is I think she is a nice person. And in one way I feel sorry for her, but I think she's a victim of her own greed. I do think that she has courted, even before Andrew, she has courted people with money. She's wanted that lifestyle. And if you involve yourself with people like that, and especially take money from them, you are definitely on the wrong track. And after Andrew and her supporting him for this to come out, there's no way back for her. She's not a real royal. Andrew is not, and I think they should both just disappear, personally.
I mean, in fact, this is another theme of your book, that if you're taking money from somebody, you're beholden to them. Everybody knows there's no such thing as a free lunch. Everybody knows that if you're in terrific debt, and Fergie's run up the most massive debt, sometimes debts of £5 million, then you're going to have to cozy up to the most revolting people on earth to try and get some money out of them, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's incredibly grubby, and it corrupts power in all sorts of ways. And I think, Vanessa and Marvyn, you've made some very important points here, which is the survivors of Epstein's terrible, terrible crimes are front and centre of our thoughts anytime we speak about this. And I was so struck, I actually got to interview Prince Andrew years ago for a Sunday newspaper. And I remember asking him and trying to connect, as I always do, and saying, have you ever thought of what your life might be like were you not a member of the royal family? And he was outraged and offended by the question.
Wow.
Which I thought was so fascinating, because here is someone who lacks basic imaginative empathy for what it might be like to be someone else. In fact, he believes that even questioning his status is insulting. And I think that's at the core of it. It's this bubble that you exist in. And Fergie's not the worst of them by a long way. She wasn't born into it in the same way as Andrew was. And I think it's this bubble that enables people to act in ways without consequence. And we have to, as Marvyn rightly says, keep reminding them that there are real life consequences.
I had a very strange experience with her myself. It was way back in 2004 when I, in those days, was presenting a show on afternoon radio on BBC Radio London. And we kept getting these phone calls on behalf of Fergie. I thought it was a hoax. So did my producer. What on earth would she be phoning for God's sake? Anyway, it turned out it really was her, and it really was her representative. And she said, to be a sort of correspondent on the show. She didn't live in London. It was a regional BBC show. It's like, what on earth would you want to do that for? Anyway, I was made to go and have a meeting with her by my boss, which I did. She gave me this doll. This is Little Red. And actually, she signed her name on its bottom. I don't know if you can see, but it says, does it say Dearest Vanessa? Vanessa spelt wrongly. Love Sarah, 2004.
Wow.
I've kept it all these years.
Vanessa
could
with two
you put it
Yes.
down?
Sorry.
Anyway,
I don't know why.
she couldn't have been nicer. I mean, she was very, very nice indeed. But she said she really did want to be on the show every single day. And I said, are you sure? Aren't you rather busy? And and then she said the thing that I thought that she really wanted me there for, which was she said to me, but you do think I'll find love again, don't you? Yeah. I felt terribly sorry for her. Yeah. And I said, oh, I'm sure you will. But I felt like saying, I don't know. I hope
Are you dating?
do. And then she said, and I'll be on the show every day. Tell your boss or your producer, phone this number, which they did. No one ever picked up. She was never on the show. I never thought she would be on the show. That really happened. It was at the Langham Hotel in 2004. I walked into the street thinking, what was I here?
Was that a fever dream?
But you got a doll. But you got a doll.
It was so weird, but I've still got the doll, which proves I didn't imagine it. But I mean, at the time, I thought she was a little unusual. Let's put it that way.
She's highly insecure.
But I didn't think that she was bad. No. But I do think that this is pretty bad. Let's talk to Mary. She's in Belfast. Oh, Mary, I think Mary may have really just put her finger on this whole thing. What do you think, Mary?
Yeah, I don't believe there is a way back for Fergie. She knew what Epstein was, even if you were to say that she made a mistake up until the point where Epstein was convicted of paedophilia. After he was found guilty, he did time in prison. Both Andrew and her still remained friends or in contact with Epstein. If it was a case that she felt that she had to reach out to him because there was a security risk, I mean, I'm sure the royal family would have provided there in terms of personal security. But the way I see it is she was afraid because Epstein had the power of knowledge in that he knew whatever skeletons was in Andrew's closet, whatever skeletons was in her closet. And I don't feel sorry for her. And your panellists are correct when they say it all boils back to power, entitlement, money. And in all this conversation, we forget about the victims. And it shouldn't just be limited to her patronages holding her accountable for that email. The email is only a small piece of the picture. I'm sure if it all came out, we would really know about the involvement between her, Andrew, and Epstein. And I'm actually struggling with the fact that their daughter has a great podcast and is doing great work on modern day slavery. Yeah. And as far as I can see, this taints it.
Let's go straight to Lavinia, who's in Essex. Lavinia, what do you think is going on? And do you think she might manage to make it back into public favour?
Of course, there's always forgiveness. And who are we to judge? Who are we to judge? She's been foolish. Her mother left her. Like Diana, their mothers left them. They had no mother to help them, and no mother would allow a young girl to go off to parties that they shouldn't be going to. And that's another subject. But she has been very foolish, but she's never left her children, and she's gone back to Andrew to look after the children and the grandchildren. There is all forgiveness. And we are so judgmental. I'd like to ask all these people who are criticising what they've done for them, for their children and for their country. It's about time people started thinking about the country and stop whinging and get on with life.
I suppose, Lavinia, though, the issue here is that she gave an interview. So, in other words, she was telling you, Lavinia, she was telling me, she was telling Elizabeth and Marvyn and Lizzie and everybody else watching, I am never going to have any contact with this paedophile again. I abhor what he has done. Now, we're allowed to judge that because it was an interview aimed at us. It wasn't a private matter.
Yes, well,
that's none of our business. It was our business. She made it our business, didn't she? And then went back on it, you see.
Yes, but if I may say so, I don't know the facts, but I suspect that she was being threatened and was very frightened because she was, you couldn't have picked a nastier man, but there are a lot of...
Lavinia, you've hit the nail on the head, and he was the most vile, nasty bully that was threatening her, and he wanted revenge, and he said Sarah, I'm going to bring down the York family. And, she was scared for her life and her girls. And I know people, our thoughts are with the victim. She was so stupid. She was so silly. But after she condemned him, publicly, which was the right thing to do, he then went for her. He went for her, and she just was trying to calm him for the sake of her family and what it would do to the rest of the royal family. So if you could kind of, see it from that side. So she should have never got involved.
But she doesn't say that. She doesn't say it's for my family. She says my writing career and my sort of charitable status with children's charities. So, she
was trying to appease him.
Also, I think threatening to reveal things about a family is not the same as threatening physical harm. And I think, yes, you want to save your family, but someone revealing truths about you, that's not a reason to engage with someone in that way.
And ironically, the person who seemed to reveal most was Prince Andrew in the interview with Emily Maitler.
Exactly.
So, who really brought everything coming down upon her family. Let's talk to Louise in North Yorkshire. How do you feel about this, Louise?
I'm absolutely boiling with rage with the whole York family.
Explain why, Louise.
I'm Yorkshire, I'm near York, and the fact that they call the Duke and Duchess of York my blood.
It's a little difficult to hear you. Your phone line's no good, but I think we can hear
the rage is coming through.
Louise's blood is boiling, and I'm not surprised. Are you?
No, and I think it's such a complicated issue. We hear from Lavinia, who clearly has such a forgiving heart, and then we hear from Louise, who's from Yorkshire, and is like, they're a disgrace to the name of York. And clearly it's something that's very divisive, and ultimately there are human tragedies at the centre of this that we are at risk of ignoring by getting too caught up on what she should and shouldn't have done. Let's put the victims front and centre, and let's think about what serves them the best, because this really, it's not a crime without consequence.
Quite.